Robert Craig, just an old man reading from his Bible. I'm the old man. This is the Bible, the Holy Bible, King James Version. Now, last time we were talking about Paul's version of the Council at Jerusalem, and how it seems clear to me, at least, that there's two different gospels that are being preached by two different groups. Paul and his group are out away from Israel, and they are preaching the gospel of Christ. And the elders and apostles at Jerusalem, they're teaching what Jesus taught them for 3 years, the gospel of the kingdom. So we had that issue settled at the council, but he puts a but in here. In chapter 2, verse 11 in Galatians, he says, "But when Peter was come to Antioch," so we know that at some point Peter is in Antioch and he's staying with them for a time. He said, "I withstood him to the face because he was to be blamed." Now he's talking about a thing that happened here, which I believe is those men arriving with their unreasonable demands about circumcision and law keeping. Verse 12 says, "For before that certain came from James, he did eat with the Gentiles." Well, that's as much a breaking of the law as what he protested about when he saw that sheet lowered down by four corners. But he was told not to call anything unclean that God had made clean. So he's not amongst his judgmental brethren at Jerusalem. He's out in the far reaches where these disciples in Antioch are being called Christians. And he's eaten with those Gentiles who have joined the little flock. And in Jerusalem, that would have been kind of frowned upon, but here he's out of their reach. So, but it says, "But when they were come," who? The certain who came from James. James was a circumcision guy for sure. When they were come, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing them which were of the circumcision. You know, in the early 70s, the first few years after I got out of finishing up my 4 years in the Air Force, I was working this warehouse job, dry goods warehouse, for a chain of department stores, clothing stores, and so on in Memphis. And there was this fellow named Glenn. We were sitting there in the lunchroom, and we were talking about things we'd done that we might be ashamed of later. And he said, "Well, I know one thing I'll always be ashamed of." He was a hippie. He was wearing these green coveralls that had little pockets all over it. And he said the police came in, and it was another time he was eating lunch. These police came in and started heading right for him. And he knew who they were really looking for was another guy that worked there that looked a lot like him. But they saw the long hair and they assumed they had the right man. And they walked up and got on either side, and they put a hand on his upper arms and said, "Let's go." And he said, "Before I could even think, I said, 'I'm not the one.'" And he was already ashamed of it. But he knew that they were going to nab him. But one of the bosses came up and saved the day and said, "Hey, you don't just come in here and grab our people like that." And they got it straightened out, and he didn't get arrested or even attempted. But Peter was like caught with his hand in the cookie jar here. When they came in, he panicked, and he jumped up and moved over to the Jewish table. He withdrew and separated himself, fearing them which were of the circumcision. He was afraid of what they might think of him, because he knew they just wouldn't understand. And, well, he just didn't handle it well in Paul's view. And the other Jews dissembled likewise with him, insomuch that Barnabas also was carried away with their dissimulation. And this is all part and parcel of what Paul is fighting against. When they went, soon after this, they went to the Jerusalem council. But when I saw that they walked not uprightly according to the truth of the gospel, I said unto Peter, he didn't call all of them out, but he called out Peter especially, because Peter was like the ranking man there. He was an apostle of the Lord. I said unto Peter before them all, if thou being a Jew livest after the manner of the Gentiles, and not as do the Jews, why compellest thou the Gentiles to live as do the Jews, knowing, or we who are Jews by nature, and not sinners of the Gentiles, knowing that a man is not justified by the works of the law, but by the faith of Jesus Christ. Even we have believed in Jesus Christ, that we might be justified by the faith of Christ, and not by the works of the law. For by the works of the law shall no flesh be justified. In other words, he's trying to point out there's something that we're standing for here. And these men that are coming in, they're laying out their demands that there needs to be some cutting done here to make things according to standard. But he says, but if we seek to be justified by Christ, we ourselves, while we seek to be justified by Christ, in other words, not by the works of the law, we ourselves are found sinners. Is therefore Christ the minister of sin? God forbid. There's a lot you could think about there. For if I build again the things which I destroyed, I make myself a transgressor. In other words, he's saying there's no going back on this. That's why he said we what was it he said before in the previous chapter, to whom we gave place by subjection, no, not for an hour, that the truth of the gospel might continue with you. His concern was always for the saints of the church. For I, through the law, am dead to the law, that I might live unto God. I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me, and the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. See, that's why you don't have to keep the law. I do not frustrate the grace of God. See, what Peter was doing was a frustration to the grace of God. For if righteousness come by the law, then Christ is dead in vain. In other words, it would all be for nothing. What would be the point of the cross if we could make ourselves right by keeping the law? Let's just go on there, right into chapter 3. Oh, foolish Galatians. He's talking to these people that are so soon removed, and he wants to straighten them out. O foolish Galatians, who hath bewitched you that ye should not obey the truth, before whose eyes Jesus Christ hath been evidently set forth, crucified among you. I think the sentence structure might be a little bit archaic here, but I get the sense that the preaching that Paul had done here, he set forth Christ before them as evidence. In other words, evidently set forth. set forth as evidence. And it was among them that he tells them about the crucifixion. He's preaching the cross. This only would I learn of you. Received ye the Spirit, Spirit with a capital S. Received ye the Spirit by the works of the law, or by the hearing of faith? Are ye so foolish, having begun in the Spirit, capital S, Spirit, are ye now made perfect by the flesh? You know, that's really a pretty common attitude in modern day churches. I've heard a few people, especially in Pentecostal circles, that will say, yeah, when you come to the Lord, He gives you a clean slate, but you got to walk the straight and narrow from that point on, or else you're a backslider. My sister's church, she told me about one lady who had been baptized a number of times, and as she came up out of the baptistry, pastor said, "That's all right. I'd rather see somebody ride the altar rail to heaven as to backslide and go into hell." I don't guess I need to tell you they believed in the possibility of losing salvation. I think somehow they missed the sealing of the Spirit, but they focus on other areas of Scripture than what some of us do. So he says, you started off, you came into this in the Spirit, and now you want to come to maturity, be made perfect by the flesh. He's not talking about being in the flesh. He's talking about by the flesh, or by the works of the flesh. Have you suffered so many things in vain, if it be yet in vain? He that ministereth to you the Spirit, with a capital S, and worketh miracles among you, doeth he it by the works of the law, or by the hearing of faith? Well, once again, we've used up a little bit of time here, but who am I kidding here? Am I going to be able to wrap up Galatians? But I'm just trying to show these differences between Paul's gospel and the kingdom gospel. And I think we can wrap it up next time. For now, though, may the Lord bless this reading of His Holy Scripture. I hope these videos are being helpful to someone who have struggled to understand seeming conflicts or contradictions in Scripture, because it all rises about where one Scripture is talking to one group of people, and it's not even for you. It's for another people at another time. And I think maybe this will help straighten some of that out, or maybe at least put you on the right track that you can study it out for yourself. I'll see you next time. Hope you'll join me then.